All right, there we go. All right, so we're going to start the May 26, 2020 regular council meeting. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Thank you. And now we'll take public comments on closed session.
Mayor O'Neill, members of the council, this is Jim Mosher. The agenda for the meeting that you're about to convene has a very cryptic announcement about the closed session. When that cryptic announcement is decoded through the government code, it means, at least to me, that you will be speaking in private because the city has done something wrong over which it could be sued, but the party or parties that were wronged by that city error don't know that the city did something that they can sue over. Therefore, disclosing even the topic of your discussion would tip them off to the city's disadvantage. I would like to ask those attending the meeting first, in the meeting, ask yourself, is that really what the closed session is about? And second, whether hiding possible errors by the city, even if allowed by the Brown Act, is good public policy. I think the ability to admit errors when they are made is a virtue, not a vice. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any calls? No. All right. I don't mind. Mr. Muldoon.
Thank you. Just want to say, the overwhelming reason we tend to be in closed session is not because the city did something wrong. The city did quote anything wrong. More likely, it's an issue of negligence. Maybe there's an access issue, and someone's suing the city. So I just don't. It's not nefarious. This item certainly isn't, although we can't disclose what it's for. But it's such a pessimistic way to look at the world, Jim. Most closed session items are not because anyone did anything wrong at all. Of course, the city is not perfect, and we understand that, but we think we have a fantastic city and staff that is overwhelmingly competent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Harp.
Thank you, Mayor Neal. The City Council will adjourn to closed session to meet with legal counsel to discuss one matter of anticipated litigation.
All right. And then we will have, we'll recess and then we'll reconvene after closed session. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. We're coming back from still the May 26th, 2020 meeting. We're coming back from our closed session. Mr. Harp, do we have a, oh, I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Mr. Harp, do we have a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor Neal. There's no closed session report this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, do we have an invocation tonight? All right. Kevin, it's your birthday. Would you like to lead the invocation?
No, I'd love to.
Okay.
Today is also John Wayne's birthday, so I got to give a tribute to John Wayne as well. Heavenly Father, we thank you for being with us during this troubling time, and we thank you for the community you've created, and we pray for more cohesion and cooperation and patience with each other. And Lord, we know that birthdays are special. Today also is John Wayne's birthday. We thank you, God, for everyone who contributes to our society, everyone you know by name, every birthday you choose. We thank you for the love you bestow upon us. We pray for our city and for our nation, for the entire world during this time. And we thank you for all the blessings, and we pray that those who are in need have the courage to ask for help, and those who have the ability to help have the courage and resolve to do everything they can for their neighbors. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Just place your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We're going to start with a presentation to our Public Works Department because it is Public Works Week, and I actually have a proclamation which I get to give in person for the first time in quite some time. So Mr. Webb, why don't you come on up? I'll read the proclamation and then let you say a few words as well. Whereas Public Works personnel focus on providing infrastructure, facilities, and maintenance services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and their contributions to the public welfare, safety, and well-being of the people of the city of Newport Beach. And whereas the city's infrastructure, facilities, parks, beaches, and maintenance services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of Public Works professionals who make up the Public Works Department. They are highly trained professionals, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector whose efforts are responsible for constructing, rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation system, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public streets, parks and beaches, harbors and waterways, landscaping, public buildings, and other structures essential to our citizens and for the continued beautification of their communities. And whereas it is the public interest for the citizens and civic leaders in the city of Newport Beach to expand their knowledge of and to maintain a continuing interest and understanding of the challenges and importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, be it now, therefore, I, Will O'Neill, Mayor of the City of Newport Beach, do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th to 23rd, 2020, as National Public Works Week in the city of Newport Beach, and I encourage all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in recognizing our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to appreciate the contributions they make to protecting our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mayor, Council, for taking a moment out of your busy schedule to recognize National Public Works Week. I'm just excited to lead this organization in that realm. We have some great men and women out in the field doing so much great work. And this is, normally I talk to you about the fun things I love, infrastructure and things like that. But this has been a real challenging year, as you know, this last thing. And the nice thing that's come out of this is a lot of folks have had some face-to-face talks with our public works folks. I get a lot of calls about, thank you for picking up that trash. That street needs sweeping. Thank you for getting to that. The parking lots look great. You guys have been after it. I'm real thankful. And, you know, one of the things we're really getting to appreciate, one of our folks we don't think about is our janitorial staff. We get more folks thanking our janitorial staff as I walk around, so it's real good to see that. And I'm also saying that the public works staff has really been working hard for the citizens as they've gone through this trial and been kind of locked down. We have been being proactive out there, trying to make sure the city's in good shape when they get up. We're trying to take advantage of some of the opportunities that come out of this crisis, like trying to take care of some of our parking lots when they're empty. We've been maintaining our parks and sports fields where the kids aren't on them. We're making sure when they come back, they're ready to go. We're planting trees and things in difficult spots. We're doing facility maintenance inside right now where normally people don't like to smell paint and cleaning fluids. We're in there with our rec staff and doing all that work, getting ready for folks to come back and enjoy the city. So I'm just thankful for the opportunity and the recognition tonight, Lord. We do have some public work managers here tonight, and thanking them. I'd have more, but of course the conditions don't allow. So thank you for the time.
Hang on just one second, Ms. Brenner.
I just wanted to say there could not be a department that deserves more recognition over the last 2.5 months than your department. You guys have been exceptional. And it's like we've been saying, open this up, close that down, put up a barrier here, more signs here. You just have been so responsive and in such difficult circumstances where we didn't really know what we were doing. We were trying this and trying that. And I just want to tell your entire department how much we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Webb, I will find a way to take a picture of this with you at some point in the future. I feel like the mayor needs to take way more pictures than he has this year, but we'll at least find a way to
Photoshop the two together.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly right.
Mr.
Awesome.
Mayor, may I make a comment?
Oh, absolutely, Ms. Dixon.
I'm over here in left field. Ms. Brenner said the words that were just about ready to come out of my mouth. I mean, we know that we have a terrific public works department. I knew that. I've known that for many years. Certainly the years I've been on the council, and how investment, I often say this, private and public investment in our community is what keeps our property values what they are. And it's a private investment, private industry, private business, but it's the public investment that keeps our infrastructure looking beautiful and our infrastructure humming and doing all the things that infrastructure is supposed to the things that they do that you love to do. And so I appreciate that. I commend you for that, and your organization is outstanding. But in the last 2 months, 60-some days, and the barricades on the boardwalk and up and down and close this street and close that street and pick up the trash and get the more get onto the summer program in the middle of May and middle of April, you have literally turned somersaults and cartwheels for the people of Newport Beach and for the city council trying to be responsive to the residents in our respective districts. And you've made it happen. You never say no. You never say it can't be done. You do it. And I just want you to know that the people in my district are very grateful. And I've gotten emails as recently as Sunday on this. Thanks for the trash pickup. Thanks for opening and closing this particular street. So thank you. And thank you to all your team members for making us look good. I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you very much for those good words. You know, it's interesting when you're talking there, I just want to say that you folks, the council of the city, are the supportive ones and really need to be thanked by the citizens. I've worked in many cities, and public works is not, or infrastructure is not held in the realm you folks do. And your efforts show our citizens are benefiting from that. Other cities who haven't taken it as important, well, their property values and their quality of life have suffered a little. So thank you all for being committed to that. I appreciate it.
Mr. Herdman, one more comment.
Yeah, stay there, Dave, just for a minute. I'm not going to repeat anything that anyone said. I think the thing that I've appreciated from you and your staff over the years is your ability to problem solve, and really problem solve. I have had you say no to me, and it's okay because you always follow it with, let's do this instead, or let's try this. And it's always worked. It's always been effective. And I often wonder what the city is going to do without you when you decide to retire.
You got these great folks.
It's going to be a massive. It's going to be a massive loss. So, good work. Keep it up. You're much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, Madam Clerk.
The City Council of Newport Beach welcomes and encourages community participation. Public comments are generally limited 3 minutes per person to allow everyone to speak. Written comments are encouraged as well. The City Council has a discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items.
Okay. We're going to move into City Council announcements and oral reports from City Council on committee activities. We'll start with Mr. Herdman.
I have none.
Ms. Dixon.
Is this the time to also do an A1 item?
Yes, it is.
Today, the Board of Supervisors approved unanimously a resolution to declare that houses of worship of all faiths be deemed essential in the county, and I would like to propose that this come back for consideration to have a similar resolution that deem all houses of worship essential, just like essential businesses, but essential houses of worship in our city at a future meeting, and would appreciate being able to bring that back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Duffield. Mr. Muldoon.
Yes, thank you. I have a one. First of all, I agree with you, Councilwoman Dixon. All houses of worship are essential, as are the charity they bring. We've seen, unfortunately, a drastic increase in the need for food and services to those who are suffering due to the economic crisis. Here locally, Our Lady Queen of Angels is going to be doing a drive-up blessing and food drive at its location across from Colonel Del Mar High School. Hopefully this coming Sunday, if this item we vote on tonight passes, which the mayor, Councilman Dixon and I have been working on with staff, that would allow essentially outdoor activity for other businesses. So Father Steve will be there to bless you and to receive any food donations you might have that would go to Catholic Charities. It's being organized by Knights of Columbus, and the dates they're looking to do this would be the 31st, the end of this month, June 7th, and June 14th. So if you're interested, please stop by between 9 and 10:30 at Our Lady Queen of Angels. I will be there, Father Steve will be there, anyone on council who wants to donate their time, please join us. It's a really worthy cause, and as you could imagine, there's been a drastic increase in the need for food and care items for families in Orange County. We're living in a very tumultuous time, and staff is working overtime to ensure that many of our services are kept open. One of the services that is very loved, but understandably facing scrutiny from staff right now is the Junior Guards program. We've heard, though, that adjoining cities are opening up their program, and the governor himself is going to make a statement about summer camps, I believe, this week. So what I would like to do is I would like to reevaluate the decision on junior guards. At the next council meeting, there would be, if there's interest from my colleagues, we'd be looking at this essentially in 1 month's time. Perhaps doesn't mean the full capacity, perhaps it means smaller classes, and perhaps it means less days a week, so students only have the opportunity to do it Tuesday and Thursday as opposed to every day. But this is something that I've received a lot of emails on as my colleagues, that we would like to find a way to say yes. If ultimately we cannot say yes, we understand, but I want to see how San Diego and those other cities are finding a way to say yes. So that's my A1 item, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brenner?
I've been meeting via Zoom with a group of students from Sage Hill, Newport Harbor, and CDM who are interested in forming a youth leadership council, and they have done some research. They've got some time on their hands, so I've presented their preliminary proposal to Laura Detweiler and talked with the mayor about it, and she'll be looking that over and working with them to see if there's something that we could do in that regard. Also, our Business Advancement Subcommittee met, and our Short-Term Lodging Ad Hoc Committee met. I also met with Dave Ellis, consultant to Hoag Hospital, on the proposed changes that are occurring for Hoag, and I also got information from him about a potential $25,000 contribution by the Pacern Foundation for Friends of Oasis, and subsequently Will and I accepted their check and presented it to Mike Zimmerman, the president of Oasis. And we also met with Karen Ames, a community resident who started a Shopping for Seniors service during this process. So that was very fulfilling and positive, something positive.
Thank you. Mr. Avery?
I have none.
Okay. I've got just a few. I've had multiple meetings for TCA on subcommittees, and then we've got a full meeting this coming week. We had a finance committee this past week. This morning, I attended the Orange County Board of Supervisors meeting in my capacity as mayor of the city, as they were discussing how to disperse $75 million from the CARES Act funding to ostensibly to businesses in the Orange County area. Around 31 of 34 mayors had signed on to a letter, including I was one of the 31, last week, asking that, I'm sorry, that was a couple weeks ago now, asking that I apologize, time is coming, time is kind of, the days are mashed together. Anyway, in the last week or two, asking that money be dispersed through the cities instead of through a county or a county administrator or the way that they ultimately did it, which is kind of district by district, with the goal of ensuring that a full service city like ours and a city that has significantly more business participation than some other areas in the county, we would be essentially, we are going to be an engine of this recovery in our city, and I'd like to make sure that engine has the proper amount of fuel. And so if we're looking at it from that perspective, it would have been nice for them to have set up very clear, very understandable metrics to make sure that there would be no question of a single elected trying to make a decision on behalf of this. They did not go that direction. There were a number of mayors at the meeting today, and the vote ended up being a 3-2 vote with our local Board of Supervisor, who's the chair, Michelle Steele, and Supervisor Wagner being in the minority on this and advocating for what the mayors have been asking for. I suppose if there is a silver lining to the ultimate decision, which was to take the $75 million, split it up 5 ways, and basically disperse by district and allow the each supervisor in each district to essentially how to decide how to disperse that within the rules of the CARES Act. It sounds like, based on the questions that were being asked, that that our particular Board of Supervisor, as well as Supervisor Wagner, will be trying to disperse that money directly to the cities for the cities to disperse themselves. I don't know exactly how much or what the standards will be, but I'm confident that we'll be paying attention to exactly those. So our businesses may have a lifeline that they otherwise wouldn't have, and it's not quite as much as I would have liked for it to have been, but it is still something that is rather significant. So got to spend a lot of time down at the Board of Supervisors today. Then do we have a couple of slides? Okay. As a reminder to our local community groups, the city's special event and community programs grant applications are due tomorrow at 5 p.m. That's Wednesday, May 27th at 5 p.m. These annual grants are available to local groups within the city, as well as regional groups offering programs for Newport Beach residents. For more information, visit newportbeachca.gov/grants. Next slide, please. There you go. I'm also excited to announce that a new guide to emergency preparedness, the Newport Ready Guide, is now available for download on the city website. This guide was a collaborative effort by our police department and fire department with assistance from Chapman University and the Emergency Management Institute of Design. The guide covers everything that you, as a Newport Beach resident, need to do to prepare for a variety of emergencies and disasters. As we begin to emerge from the COVID-19 stay-at-home order, this is a great time to start planning for the future. This guide shows you how to develop an emergency supply kit, create a family plan, and much more. You can download a copy of the guide at newportbeachca.gov/readynb. Again, that's newportbeachca.gov/readynb. And I don't know if this is the case, but I'm sure it will be after I say this. I'm confident it will be one of the splash pages as well on our front page. And then lastly, I also have an A1 item. I'd like to have a resolution supporting and commending Hoag Hospital. They've been doing some pretty amazing things lately. You probably know this by now, but we would not be in phase 2 right now without Hoag Hospital. When the guidelines came out, Hoag was there for us because the only thing that the county was missing, they were missing around a little over 80,000 surgical gowns, and they were missing around 80,000 N95 masks in order to reach phase 2. Once I had found out about that, I reached out to Hoag, and Hoag jumped on it immediately, and they transferred within days. They transferred over 80,000 gowns and over 80,000 N95 masks to the county in order for the county to be able to file its attestation, saying that they were ready to move into phase 2. My understanding, I'm not 100% on this, but my understanding is that supply will be sent back to Hoag Hospital when the county receives its next shipments. But just want to point that out for Hoag. So I think we ought to, and as I think most of us know, they're also going through some ownership litigation as well, and I think it's an appropriate time for us to express our appreciation for everything that Hoag's doing. So I'd like to bring that back as an A1 as well. Okay. We'll move into consent calendar. Madam Clerk.
This is the time in which council members may pull items from the consent calendar for discussion. Those are items 1 through 10. Public comments are also invited on consent calendar items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each item for up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion unless members of the City Council request specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
All right. Mr. Herdman. Anything on consent to poll or declare conflict?
How are you handling item 10, where we have to vote?
Well, item 10 is right now only a decision on the slate of candidates, so we wouldn't actually be voting on the...
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay. All right, Ms. Dixon.
None, thank you.
All right, Mr. Duffield. I have none. Mr. Muldoon.
Yes, thank you. I'll be entering a no vote on item 5. And I have a clarifying question. We don't need to pull this item. Mr. Webb, on the demolition of the pier. It's a decent item, but just want to get your opinion. There are safety considerations as well about the stability of the pier.
We're concerned with the age of some of the piles and stability through winter storms.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Ms. Brenner?
I have a question for Dave also, before you sit down. Dave, on the Cameo Highlands street replacement, I was reading the report, and it said that the reason the streets didn't last as long as we would expect them to is because they were constructed on native land. How will this reconstruction be different from how it was done originally?
So we will use a deeper structural section. The old streets in some of our cities, most of Orange County, the county lab would obviously just put AC, asphalt, concrete on direct compacted earth. And over the time, that earth gets wet and expands, and it deteriorates faster than modern streets will be thicker asphalt, or they'll even put a rock base underneath. But we'll be using a thicker asphalt section. I'm just top of my head, I think it's like 10 inches versus the 3 inches that's out there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Avery?
I have none.
Okay. I'm going to make a quick comment on item 10. Mr. Mosier makes a point that I wanted to make sure I at least raised here. So a year ago, we were trying to debate on what to do with an Arts Commission issue, and we'd seen at the time that there was a need for a very limited one-time exception for someone to serve for an extra year because that was it was a unique circumstance. I will tell you that looking at our Arts Commission right now, there are 2 openings and three potential candidates. All of these 3, after interviewing them, all 3 of them could be on the Arts Commission. The reason we only have 2 vacancies is because when we had made the decision last year that we would be moving forward with an Arts Commission seat and going against policy by having someone up for a 3rd term was that it would only be a 1-year term. That person has not resigned and has not followed through on what I had understood the commitment to be on that. And so I'm pointing that out because I'm trying to be very respectful here, but all of us understood what we were doing at that time, and we do have some really quality candidates. And I want to point that out because I think it's important, and I have no intention of trying to declare the seat vacant or anything like that. But I think it's important that we recall that reason, because we do have 3 solid candidates for 2 spots, and then there should be 3. So I agree with Mr. Mosier's comments that we went against a lot of precedent. We went against our own policy, and I wish we had the 3 seats that I think we had all expected to see on this at this time. So I just think it's unfortunate that's where we are right now. Because I will say, and this is maybe the other thing, I said this a year ago, there are a number of people who serve 2 terms. I'd love to see serving a 3rd, but they don't apply. And so I think it's unfortunate that that's where we are at the moment. All right, we'll go to public comment. I'm sorry, Mr. Avery. No recusals. So
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead, Mr. Avery?
So I move the consent calendar items 1 through 10 with no items being pulled and no recusals, and with a no vote for Mr. Muldoon on item number 5 and amendments to item 1.
All right, do we have a second? Seconded by Mr. Muldoon. We'll go to public comment.
Council, this is Jim Mosher. First of all, with regard to item number 1, which is the amended minutes, there's still a problem with those on page 394, where Director Webb was speaking about the proposals to split trails in the corrected paragraph. He's talking about the Ocean Boardwalk parking lot project. He is not talking about the Ocean Boulevard concrete pavement project, which is a different project in Corona del Mar. And there's also a problem with item 10 that I don't think the staff has detected, which has to do with the appointments to the Civil Service Board. The procedure for making appointments to the Civil Service Board is spelled out in great detail in the city charter. The 2 vacancies that you are confirming nominees for tonight are supposed to be selected from a list of 5 persons who are nominated by the classified employees of Newport Beach, who are basically the police and fire department. They apparently have offered you only 4 nominees. The charter requires 5. So I think that item needs to be sent back to them to come up with a 5th nominee. I really want to talk about the other nominations which came from the Ad hoc Appointments Committee. I have a little trouble with the idea of 3 council members privately screening the appointments before they're seen by the other council members. It's good to see the several instances in which the committee offered more than 2 people per vacancy, but I have trouble with the Planning Commission where there are 2 openings and only 3 candidates have been offered. I know, normally there are many applications for the Planning Commission. I know that I applied for this. I don't know how many others did because the City Hall has been changed. And I understand I may not be the committee's choice, but without being offered even the courtesy of an interview, I have to wonder what standard the committee judged me by to be so totally disqualified as not even to be offered to the remaining council members as even a possibility. I have attended more Newport Beach Planning Commission meetings and critically read more Newport Beach Planning staff reports, including those to the zoning administrator, than any of the candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. Any calls? Okay. Let me respond real quickly to the Civil Service Board. That is the entirety of the people who submitted applications for the Civil Service Board. So I don't believe that they can conscript anyone to volunteer onto the Civil Service Board to add a 5th member. That's been my understanding. So I would suggest that yes, they should probably send 5, but if only 4 are willing to even entertain the position, I suspect that is why we saw 4 there. All right, bringing it back up, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I will read the ordinance title. For item 3, ordinance number 2020-14, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach terminating those certain 2017 non-exclusive franchise agreements for commercial solid waste and divertible materials handling services within the City of Newport Beach. The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Okay. Now is the time for public comments on non-agenda items. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda items?
Mayor O'Neill, members of the council, Jim Mosier again. First of all, a very happy John Wayne Day in Newport Beach to all of you. I appreciate the festivities have been a little bit muted this year because of the coronavirus, and perhaps our new public information officer didn't know about John Wayne Day in Newport Beach, but it's great that the council has given the city a chance to honor one of America's great heroes. Second non-agenda comment I want to make is about the timing of the meeting today and at your last regular meeting. Your meetings are held pursuant to California's open meeting law, which was enacted in large part so that people would know at what time council meetings happen throughout California. In Newport Beach, the expectation is that the regular business of the City Council is conducted when you reconvene at 7 p.m. in the evening. At your last 2 meetings, at your last meeting and tonight, right now, the regular business of the city is being conducted at an hour unexpected, and I think it would be good for the city to get back to holding its regular meetings at the appointed hour of 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Any calls? Okay. We'll come back to current business, item number 11. So item number 11, I don't believe needs a staff report. It's fairly good, but I think it would be helpful just real quickly for us to. So Councilmember Muldoon, Councilmember Dixon, and I have been working as part of the ad hoc committee to pay attention, a lot of attention to the guidance coming out from the state and the county, because as we have been abundantly reminded recently, those kinds of decisions can be made on a Saturday morning of Memorial Day weekend. So we've been trying really hard to make sure that we pay attention to the signals that are coming out, because we never quite know what the timing will be, but we can at least get a sense of some of the discussions. This is a good example of that. We had a pretty good idea that what would be happening is a reduced capacity reopening of our dining and retail establishments, and we had members of the business community reaching out across all sectors to talk to us about trying to increase basically their floor space, their ability to sell. And a number of other cities have been also talking about the idea of trying to get out into the public. So it's probably worth reminding everyone that the one I like to use, the example I like to use is actually Bandera. So Bandera in Corona del Mar has the upper and the lower parking lots. Clearly, if they're doing social distancing procedures within Bandera, they are not going to be at 100% capacity, and therefore 100% of parking would not be necessary for them. But if they wanted to use any of the upper parking lot, they'd have to seek a parking variance. A parking variance would require them to go through the Planning Commission, which would take quite some time. And so if you want to make sure that a restaurant like Bandera is continuing to operate and essentially bridge over, this still wouldn't get them to 100% of their capacity, but at least bridge them to a time when they can continue to be economically profitable and feasible, we really need to be paying attention to what our businesses are asking for. So what this does is, and it's not just this, obviously, it's also places, you could do the same thing, for example, down in Crystal Cove. If you wanted to expand out and put some of your, clothing racks out into a parking spot or something along those lines, you could do that, but you'd have to ask for the variance. And so we've had a lot of businesses asking for this consideration. Now that the state has allowed for this on Saturday and we have a good sense of what the guidelines are, the thought process is to bring this as an emergency ordinance to give discretion to our community development department, which will also be working in conjunction with, and I apologize, Simone, I'm forgetting all of the other departments. It's police, fire, and public works. So it's not that this will eliminate controls on safety. Far from it. This is one of those times where what we're trying to do is give discretion to the lead agency on this will be Community Development Department, but also work with public safety personnel to make, and which includes Public Works in this discussion, to make sure that any decisions we make are vetted. And so it's not a rubber stamp. It's not a discussion where it's just going to happen as soon as someone applies in, but we do need to anticipate the speed with which people will be applying, and we do need to make sure that we're giving the discretion at the level that's appropriate to make sure that speed happens, but with the checks and balances that come along with it. So that's the thought process behind this. I'm pleased with the ultimate work product, but I wanted to at least talk you through what the discussion was. Ms. Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. Maybe if Mr. Jurgis would come up, I just have a few questions to explain the process. One of the ideas that we all agreed on, and all of these ideas to agree on, is to fast track our business reopening. In fact, using that term, fast track, I brought that from my private public corporation days, is how you serve customers best, and that's to fast track their needs. So if you'd want to just briefly describe how these various departments will come together, and it will include all commercial businesses, correct?
That's correct. That's correct, yes. So we do have an application that's going to be posted. If the council adopts it this evening, we have staff monitoring and watching this council meeting, and they're going to launch the webpage right afterwards. And anybody can do a search, just type back to business, and there's an application that they fill out. We just require a site plan or a seating plan to identify where that seating is going to be. That gets routed to the 3 other departments that I've mentioned, police, fire, and public works. And within 24 hours, we should have a response back to the applicant. Either we're approving it or we need to make some amendments to it. And it's all going to be done virtually. The applicant does not need to come into City Hall. It's all through the email system and through, we're going to use a DocuSign type of signature system.
Well, I think this is fabulous, and it's fantastic. And our whole objective is how do we get our businesses, all commercial entities, up and running as quickly as possible. I think we may have observed over the weekend, at least I did, the enthusiasm of some of our restaurants to expand into their parking lots without seeking this conditional use permit. Would you like to just make a comment as to encourage people to wait until we go through this process starting tomorrow?
That's correct. So we know of a lot of restaurants that have expanded into their parking lots without the use permit because council hasn't adopted the program yet or the emergency ordinance yet. If the council were to adopt it, we want to encourage everybody to reach out to us. Again, type in Back to Business on the city's website or call City Hall. We're going to expedite and fast track this permit application, this use permit process. They don't have to come to City Hall at all, but they need to come and communicate with us. So there are some concerns from our standpoint. We want to make sure that fire has access. The fire department, the fire trucks can actually access the property. Public Works has concerns with regards to not blocking the ADA access, the accessibility access on the sidewalk or even public parking spaces. So there are a little bit of concerns that we just want to verify and make sure. We don't want it to create the Wild West. We want it to be much more orderly. And identify specific areas where they can actually put tables or retail racks.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up on that, I wanted to ask Mr. Webb a question. I've been reading in various national media that cities are really temporarily vacating streets to open up public streets for expansion of business activities. Are there any streets we could do that? We didn't look at that as a committee because it really hadn't become so well known and other cities are doing. What are your thoughts on that?
There may be opportunities. We need to look at that. There's probably a couple down towards the pier, maybe with a bunch of businesses that are close by one street we might be able to find. As long as we can maintain circulation and safety, that's our concerns. There are other areas, like we've talked about, some public parking lots, maybe even like the pier plazas. There's things that we can do if we can just see who has the need, and we'll look at it for them.
So maybe between both of your departments too, as you see these applications coming in, if we needed to go beyond where we've already proposed in terms of accessing those public spaces, let us know.
We'll be sure to do that.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Muldoon.
Thank you. I'd like to first draw attention to our staff. Again, many of us, if you're not retired, you might be working from home, you might be furloughed. Our staff has been putting in so many hours, and I'm not always easy on staff. Everyone knows that. Grace, Simone, Dave, Chief Lewis, Chief Boyle, thank you so much for putting up with me, but also more importantly, thank you for the amazing hours you put in to make this happen. Newport Beach, we're trying to do everything we can to be sure that all businesses are considered essential. And actually, if I recall, I believe it was Councilman Dixon's brilliant idea to have this be more than just indoor dining, if that's correct. So thank you for that contribution. Of course, thanks to the mayor for putting the group together. Just a couple things so people understand why this is helpful. It's expedited. The fees are waived. It is temporary, so it's not necessarily something that if you are a neighbor and you're a little worried about it, it's not going to change the use of your property, so you can rest assured and know that it's temporary. And it's going to include a lot of things that we're all eager to do. It's going to include retail because of Councilwoman Dixon's idea. It's obviously going to include restaurant locations, and I hope it's going to also include churches, whether it's Our Lady doing a service drive-through in some parking area, or whether it's actually a service to be held, hopefully, May 31st. May 31st, as you know, a lot of churches are going to open regardless of what the governor says, and I say God bless them, and obviously want them to do it safely, but this is an option now that churches can consider. They can be open for business to tend to people's spiritual and needs and their troubles in this very tough time for everyone. So I'm very happy the way this item came out. I'm incredibly impressed with staff's willingness to be unbureaucratic, I will say, if that's a word, and really push the envelope to get everyone back to work quickly. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Yes. Sorry, the question from Mr. Avery was that this would end, any approval would end with the emergency. I think we gave a little bit of leeway just so they could pull it down. 14 days after the emergency. Yep. Okay. All right. We'll go out to public comment on this. Do we have any public comment?
Mayor O'Neill, members of the council, this is Jim Mosher. However well-intentioned this is, I just have to point out it's a terribly crafted ordinance. It gives the community development director, unbridled authority to issue an emergency temporary use permit by which he alone can suspend any provision of the Newport Beach Municipal Code. In the discussion I just heard, there seems to be an understanding, also in the letters that you received from former mayors, that the authority is limited to adjacent property. There's nothing in the ordinance that says that. We heard from the mayor that the community development director is restricted by the concerns of other departments. It does not say that. It says he needs to consult them. It doesn't, just like when you consult with your boards and commissions, he does not have to follow their advice. It's really weird and sweeping. And I think we should strive to enact laws that say what we just heard that they mean, not a law that could mean anything that's left up to the discretion of the director. Thank you.
Thank you. Any calls? No. All right. Okay. So we'll bring it back. I'm going to respond just a little bit on that one because I think it's worth discussing. There are certainly times when it makes a lot of sense for us to make sure that we have hard metrics in place. There are times when we need to make sure that we are having discussions that have numbers, that have fully vetted review by a planning commission, vetted review by a city council. There are certainly times. Unfortunately, this is not one of those times. This is one of those times where you need to have had a built-up trust in a particular individual. You need to trust that that individual is going to spend time working with people that he has worked with for quite some time, and trust the decisions and recommendations coming from those people. In this situation, the community development director is given quite a bit of discretion, and the reason for that is speed. The speed with which we need some of our businesses to stay in business. We are seeing an unfortunate number of our businesses shutter. We are seeing an unfortunate number of businesses along PCH, along Marine Avenue. We are seeing empty storefronts. We are seeing restaurants going out of business quickly, and we need an opportunity to provide them when you run a business and you have overhead, every day that you are not open is a day that is closer to that business going out. And so every day that you have the social distancing protocols in place, which of course we are trying very hard, every time we're making decisions right now, we're balancing that against a public health crisis that we are in. So we have got to have the ability then to come back around and provide that discretion to someone who has built up the trust with this council, consulting with people who have built up trust with this council and with our community development director, and understand that the constraint that is on him is both his personal integrity as well as the potential for losing his job if he were to make a decision that went against decisions from our public safety personnel. No one in their right mind is going to look at our public works department who says, if you do not put up barricades or bollards here, someone will get hit by a car. Refuse to do that, someone gets hit by a car. No one's going to do that. That's not how this works. And I trust that our community development director would make that decision. Our community development director is not going to go to our police department, have our police department say absolutely not, and then say, I know better than you. He's not going to do that to our fire chief either. And we know that. And so that's why we're able, in a moment of crisis in our city, to turn to people that we trust to make decisions that are discretionary. Would this be something that we would go forward with forever? No, of course not. And the reason it wouldn't go on forever is because, first off, we wouldn't allow for this to happen if 100% of the parking was justified because 100% of the retail space and space inside was being used. That's not how this works. And so that's why there is a constraint on the timing of this as well. So I do recognize the difference of what we're trying to do here, but we also need to recognize the difference of the time that we're living in. Ms. Dixon.
I want to move this item, please.
Seconded by Mr. Muldoon. Any further discussion? All right, let's vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance title for emergency ordinance number 2020-005, an emergency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach authorizing Community Development Director to grant emergency temporary use permits to commercial businesses and religious institutions for the utilization of private property, parking lots, sidewalks, and public property. The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
All right. We're going to move to item number 12. Again, I don't think we need a staff report, but we do have an ad hoc committee, and I think it'd be great to hear from our ad hoc committee that's been working on this for quite some time. So whoever would like to speak, go ahead. Okay, Ms. Brenner, you got pointed to.
I'll start. I'd just like to say that this committee has been working diligently, and we have met with all the members of the bids and the merchants associations, and we really took this responsibility seriously because we knew that the council had a predisposition toward not continuing to fund them in the way that they had been funded in the past. So we met with them. We were headed toward a solution, and then the coronavirus hit. And we felt like that under these circumstances, it was not the time for us to be penalizing our business organizations, that they have a lot on their plate, and we want them to be able to really support their businesses and help them to go through the steps necessary to make sure that customers feel comfortable coming to their establishments and doing all the safety measures that they could possibly do. So we recommended funding for one more year, and then as a longer-term goal, we thought the committee should be reformed at that time to come back with a separate resolution. Any more?
Oh, you know what? I'll go Ms. Dixon next, and then, because she's plugged in right here. And then, yeah, I'll go Mr. Herdman. Okay, perfect. All right. I'll go Ms. Dixon and then Mr. Herdman then.
All right, well, just to follow up on Ms. Brenner's comments, yes, we were ready to say, push them out of the nest and have all the business improvement district organizations to be totally independent. The coronavirus hit. And also, similarly, with our ad hoc Committee on Business Reopening, considering how can we muster the financial resources to support our businesses who are, in some of them, in dire need of survival. We are aware that the federal government, through the CARES Act, is going to be providing funds that we will be, I think we've applied for. We just haven't gotten the guidelines for how these funds are to be used. So I think we will, and plus our community development block grant funds, which we do have an existing balance, possibly can be used to establish a separate program, which I would like to think, and we are looking at how to do that through, I'm pointing at Tara Finnegan because she's leading that effort. Because on the current budget, actually the new budget year that we're even discussing this earlier today, the $160,000 is, confirm what I'm saying, if you would, Ms. Leong, that $160,000 that was formerly in the budget is still in the budget. So this would not be incremental dollars to the numbers what we've seen today. But what it would provide is a immediately ready, not having to wait for federal guidelines, modest source of funds to businesses to be used only and directly and explicitly for activities related to business reopening. So in a way, this is a ready, set, go, turn on fund that could be available starting the new fiscal year. In fact, we want to do that earlier, something to be determined. But for our small businesses, so that's the restaurants, it's businesses in our community that's already part of the business improvement districts. So the structure is already there. We don't have to create anything new, any new application process. It could be green lighted without any incremental cost to the current and new city budget. And so for that reason, I support this as something to help give a shot in the arm to our local businesses who contribute so much, frankly, to our sales tax base in the city. And this is a small gesture to be supportive of them. It is small, but we can help them get back on their feet sooner before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herdman.
So we put this committee together when Diane was mayor, and I was really pleased to serve on it. Diane and Joy and I worked hard. We didn't really disagree on anything. Diane was an excellent resource in terms of her experience with business improvement districts and merchants associations and the city she used to live in. I want to thank Tara, our deputy city manager, Tara Fittingen, who worked diligently on this project with us, and Melissa, as Melanie, excuse me, I can't say her last name. Starts with an F. As with this item number 12, and with item number 11, I think it's important for the community to understand the spirit of both of these. And that is that this council is committed, given this COVID-19 virus scenario that we've experienced in this city, the council's committed to assisting, helping, and supporting small businesses. And that was our entire motivation in terms of changing the road we were going down. We completely changed direction in order to support small businesses, get them back up and running. And that is also the case with number 11, the agenda item number 11 as well. So I think the spirit and our intent and our motivation is extremely important to understand behind both of these items. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Muldoon.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, this was supposed to sunset this year. I just don't see how that's fair to these organizations, though. Thank you for all the hard work you put in this, and I believe the intent is genuine to get these groups to be self-sustained in the following years, but I can't think of a better time when we do something like this, so thank you.
Thank you. So I'll make a few comments. I'm aware I'm an outlier on the discussion about the business improvement districts converting from the previous version to the current version, and so I'm not going to, I will just say, I continue not to support the current existence of the 89 bids, but I'm not going to make a pitch on that this year. I will say, if we are going to reform we're going to keep the bids in place, and I think that probably is the majority, I actually would support giving them the additional money this year. They have shown themselves to be good at what they do. I just happen to have a philosophical disagreement with 89 versus 94, and that's fine. Like I said, I won't make that pitch today. I will. Yeah.
Please, excuse me. I think we all agree. I strongly agree.
Yeah.
But this was not the year to force that transition.
And this is why I'm not pushing the issue. I will say nope, I'm not going to push the issue. All right. I will say, though, I do not agree with the Merchant Association recommendation for funding, and I'd like to at least explain why, because I do recognize the spirit that Mr. Herdman was talking about, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But I don't support it, and the reason I don't support it is for a handful of reasons. One of them is they shouldn't have been receiving money anyway in the last 3 years. This shouldn't, frankly, have even been an issue because we as a council didn't make the right decision when we just didn't realize that the commitment had been 5 years, but we were in year 7 or 8 last year. I think it was 8. And so we had been funding them beyond what the commitment had been, and we shouldn't have been doing that. There's a part of me that sort of kicks myself for even offering up the compromise last year of half to the Balboa Village Merchant Association and half to Balboa Island. I probably should have been to 0, but I know that when we made that vote last year, we had committed to going down to 0. And so at this point, especially with Balboa Village Merchant Association having the ability also to make sure that they're doing a lot within their own sphere, beautification and whatnot, using BVAC funds. I know we talked about that last year, and I know they're different, the Balboa Village Merchant Association BVAC, but there is a dedicated stream of revenue to make the village down there much nicer for the merchants. Additional money at this time out of the general fund is, I don't think, warranted. I am also a little concerned about, I agree with one of the things that Mr. Mosier had said in his public comments, or in his written comments, which was, if we're going to be spending money like this, we should at least do it citywide instead of specific to certain areas. I'm sure that there are areas in Corona Del Mar that would love this. I'm sure there are areas in Newport along PCH that would like this. I'm sure there are areas in Balboa Peninsula that would like this that are not within the Balboa Village. And so picking and choosing at this point is a really difficult thing. I don't disagree with the idea of making sure that we're we're getting money to our businesses, which is why I went and fought today at the Board of Supervisors, and we are going to be receiving money toward our businesses in that way that would be able to go citywide. Same thing with the CDBG funding. Once we get the protocols in that place, we'll be able to do it as well. I just don't agree with picking and choosing the Balboa Village and Balboa Island specific merchant associations. And maybe this is the last comment, not maybe, this is my last comment of why I'm struggling with this one. We have two competing merchant associations on Balboa Island right now. The animosity, at least months ago, that we saw spill over into our city council meeting was unfortunate, as saying that very politely. I'm not impressed with the fact that we have competing merchant associations on the same strip of pavement that is not very long. I'm certainly not all that impressed with giving $20,000 to both of them, and especially one that is so new as to have no track record of proof of using that money, let alone the fact that the only reason that that money is even contemplated is because of a commitment made almost a decade ago to the other merchants association. So I understand the spirit of this. I really do. I'd much rather go through a different direction, which will be the money coming from the CARES Act and the money coming from CDBG. And I don't believe that we should be allocating the $80,000 that we're seeing here. That $80,000 could go towards so many different things, especially citywide, and especially as we were talking earlier about grant funding for nonprofit groups that have survived in our community forever and are going to be struggling really badly to create some of those traditions that we've been able to see for so long inside of our community. So there's a lot of different things we can do with $80,000. I don't agree that this is it, so I just wanted to make sure I had expressed all those thoughts. We'll go to Mr. Avery and then we'll go to Mr. Herdman. Come back.
Yeah, for as long as I've been on council, this subject has been difficult because it's not right, and we really should be obviously working from the 94 law on this, although I know a lot of, it's a kind of a scary thing, I think, for some of the bids to go with that, but I think we really need to get there, and I think we would sort of be moving in that direction. I think the majority would if it wasn't for this particular time we're in, and I think we want to do everything we can to support businesses at this juncture, regardless of our, as the mayor said, regardless of our hesitation and concern about the status quo. It really needs to shift, and I'm confident that our memories will stick with us, and hopefully next year we could move forward if things are strong enough and business returns and people get on their feet, which is, of course, in all of our interests and foremost in our minds. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herdman, then Ms. Brenner.
Excuse me. I agree with some of the things you said, Will. And because I'm assuming, and if this item is approved tonight, I would encourage us to take this allocation into consideration when we're looking at the distribution of any other funds that we might be receiving from the county, from the state, from the federal government. Okay, let's take this into consideration first. They got some money already, in other words. Okay, and if we move forward in the direction that we were going before the pandemic hit, we're not going to be, we won't need to be concerned about any allocations for next year. Okay, so this is just a one-time, hopefully a one-time situation. So I have real concerns about the second organization on Balboa Island as well. Legitimacy, membership, yeah.
It's okay, I understand what you're saying.
I just have real concerns about it. Tara fortunately did do some research for me today on both organizations. They're both called the Balboa Island Merchants Association, but one's got an INC after it, Inc. Okay, they're both registered with the state of California. One's a nonprofit, one's an unincorporated nonprofit. And because one is an unincorporated nonprofit, They don't have to file their board information or their articles of incorporation with the state. So I'd personally like to leave them out of this allocation. In fact, I would even amend the motion to state that.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I'm just going to tell you as a matter of procedure, and I'll go to you in just a moment, Ms. Brenner. So this item is direction only. So what we're going to do is we'll take a straw poll at the end of this. So we won't need a motion, but I want to make sure that, and part of that is because I'd like to break it up into a few different straw polls just to make sure that we're providing guidance. Yep.
Good.
Yep. Okay, Ms. Brenner.
I'm not advocating one way or the other on that, but I did want to mention that some of the members of the Second Association are longtime Balboa Island residents and merchants that have been there and served their whole lives. So it's not like they're newcomers to the island. They are really long-term invested people. And I wanted to point out one line in number 3 where it says this funding would be contingent upon receiving a report from each organization that outlines the efforts it has undertaken and completed in the past year, a plan and budget outline for how it would use city funding, a profit and loss statement for fiscal year 2019-20, and a balance sheet of current assets.
I did appreciate that. Yeah, no, that was, like I said, I don't support this, but I did think that was prudent, so I did appreciate your including that. Mr. Muldoon.
Oh, thank you. So these two organizations, it's so confusing, it's almost comical. The first organization, I think, is one or a couple gentlemen who were looking to cut all the trees down on Marine Avenue, and I don't view them as representative of the people anymore than the other group. I think they both represent different contingencies, and they're both pretty important. The other group, which Councilman Brenner, I believe, was speaking to, has a very long list, although they're not incorporated yet, Mr. Herdman, a very long list of businesses. So I want to take a closer look at this. I want to see actually what Tara provided you as well, Mr. Herdman, because clearly there's more to be looked at here. And then also I want to learn more about the mayor's thoughts. So when we do the straw poll, I might set this one out, but I'm eager to see, to make the final decision when it comes to us. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, Ms. Dixon.
So what do we, so a straw poll to do what? I mean, the sense of urgency about dispersing these funds, and Mr. Herdman made it really compelling point that these other funds, we don't know when they're coming, and this would offset any other request or use of those funds towards these business areas. So I think it's a sense of urgency and expediency. So what are we talking about tonight?
Well, your recommendations are short-term fiscal year 2021. So that would be, so if these funds wouldn't even be allocated.
That's why I was asking. It would be July 1. And,
right. So there's not an issue with having this be, at our first meeting in July, for example. If we pass a budget, let's just assume for a moment a couple things, because I do want to make sure we're all on the same page when we're working through the process of this. So what we're being asked right now is not whether to renew the bids at this meeting. It's simply to make a recommendation that we bring back a renewal like we normally would year over year. So that would be, I would ask for a straw poll on whether we should be bringing that back. So that would be the first one. Second one would be
as a part of budget approval, right?
Well, no, when would we be doing that for the bids? I just don't remember. So next meeting.
The next meeting.
So we'd be bringing it back for the next meeting. Yep. The next would be as part of our budget for the next year. Would we agree that we should do basically the items in the short-term recommendations number 2, which would be provide $40,000 in city funding to the CDM bid and $40,000 to the Newport Beach Resident Association bid to help the businesses, et cetera, with the other caveats. That would be a straw poll to find out, do we want to put into the budget, or ask the city manager to include in her budget the $40,000 to the CDM bid and $40,000 to the NBRA bid. That would still be part of their, you remember how when they come back to us, they have to include their budget, and we approve that or not. And then at that same meeting, we would also be approving the $40,000 in the next year's budget. This is not approving anything tonight. It's just giving direction to staff on what to bring back to us. The third, I'm going to break out the third. The third is going to be, I'll take a straw poll on whether we should budget $40,000 to the Balboa Village Merchants Association. I'd like to do a straw poll on that. We'll do a straw poll on the $20,000 to the Balboa Island Merchant Association, Inc., and then we'll do a straw poll on the $20,000 to the Balboa Island Merchants Association, given all the same caveats in item number 3. The longer term, I don't believe we need to do straw polls on, because those are longer term issues that will need to play out a little bit in terms of the discussions, but we have quite some time. We can, we have some time to make a decision on that, but the most pressing issues are the first 3, and that's what we need to provide staff direction on right now. We can certainly discuss the longer term, but like I said, I think I don't particularly have I don't think anyone would particularly have an issue with this, because these are future votes that we'd have to take anyway, and they're not committing any finances to them. But we do need to provide direction on the short term. So that's my thought process in terms of this, because we're not being asked for an action item, but we are being asked for guidance. So that's why I wanted to do the short term. I'm sorry, that's why I wanted to do the straw poll on the short term and break them out individually. Any questions on that? Yep, Ms. Brenner.
Would you just clarify on the Balboa Village Merchants Association, your concern there is because they get the money from the parking? Is that?
No, actually, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, that was my question.
Okay. No, that is a concern, and it was a concern I'd raised last year, which is there's a substantial amount of money that has been devoted directly into the Balboa Village area, and so for the merchants themselves, they are benefiting quite a bit from a restricted fund that doesn't exist anywhere else in the city. And in fact, we were even talking about it earlier tonight when we were talking about the budget, because there were 3 line items that we had sort of decided to take out of the budget that were specific to Balboa Village area. And just because we take them out of the budget doesn't mean that those funds go away. Those funds are still restricted funds that have to be spent only in Balboa Village. And so putting more money into the Balboa Village area through a merchants association on top of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've already, actually 7 figures at this point, but hundreds of thousands of dollars that have gone into the Balboa Village area, when we are obviously looking at citywide issues in terms of all of our businesses having difficulties, I think that's difficult to justify to the vast majority of our city, including, by the way, areas on Balboa Island, including McFadden Square and other areas like that that are not beneficiaries of any of those funds. So that's my primary concern. My secondary, I'm sorry, that's not even my primary concern. That's my secondary concern. My primary concern is that we had committed this money to them almost a decade ago for a 5-year period, and we did not live up to that promise, and I think we gave away too much money. My tertiary concern is, you know what? I had it and I've lost it. It'll come back to me. But those were my primary concerns. So anyway, that's yeah.
It happens when you use words like tertiary.
Yeah. Anyway, of course.
Okay. Let me just make the distinction between the funds to the Merchants Association. That is helping the merchants specifically on the business reopening to their type of business. So it would be how to help all those businesses to work on promoting their businesses to the public. The BVAC funds are specific as part of the Parking Management District resolution to specific areas of community signage, not private signage, public wayfinding, public landscaping, public, well, not even maintenance, that's not even included in there. So these were funds that, allocations that were determined many years ago to help invest, because the city does not have an economic redevelopment department or fund in the oldest part of this city that has now even more so than before enduring significant economic decline, number one. Number two, it also receives the greatest wear and tear because of the 10 to 11 million visitors that come to the peninsula. And so the wayfinding is beneficial. Parking management is to help, it's only one parking lot, is to help people find parking. So there are structural infrastructure benefits that a prior council deemed that was important to help a severely distressed part of our community, the oldest part of our community, be viable as a community, as a public destination. So the two purposes of those funds are very different. Again, it's to offset and help them in their economic business reopening. These are small individual businesses. They're not franchised businesses. These are private businesses that are serving the public and serving our visitors that come to our community that help, incidentally, significantly bring sales tax and TOT for the short-term rentals that are in the immediate community to our community. So it's not entirely a one-way street. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion on this? Okay. Okay. Well, we'll go out to public comment on this one. Do we have any public comment? Oh, come on, Jim. This is a good one. All right. We'll come back. Do we have any? No calls? All right. Man, I thought we had a good one. All right. Coming back on this. What I'd like to do then is, unless there's further discussion, I'm going to go ahead and take a straw poll. The first straw poll I'm going to take is on renewal of the Newport Beach Restaurant Association and CDM bids for fiscal year 2020-21. If you'd like to make sure that this comes back for consideration at our next meeting, go ahead and raise your hand.
6-1 with Mayor O'Neill.
I knew it. All right, and then we'll go to item number 2, which is provide $40,000 in city funding support to the CDM bid and $40,000 to the Newport Beach Restaurant Association bid during fiscal year 2020 and 21, with additional caveats inside of the number 2. So with that being said, who would like to see that brought back at our next meeting?
That was unanimous.
Okay. And then item number 3, we'll start first. Who would like to see who would like to see our budget include $40,000 to the Balboa Village Merchants Association? That's okay. All right, hang on. You can't do a half vote, so.
Can we bring it, if we bring it back, though, we will talk about it in more detail, or?
Sorry, I need you to speak into the mic, just for the.
If we vote to bring that back, we will be talking about it in greater detail. So it won't, this is not the official vote to, is it?
Well, it is budgeting for it. I mean, all right, go ahead, and Ms. Leong, you answer.
Well, I think if we got the direction here, it would be included in the budget, and absent a council member determining to talk about it from the budget, it would be part of the budget adoption.
Well, so that's okay. Hang on. That's not how I understood it either, so I want to make sure we have the discussion now. So the funding is contingent on a handful of things that are in this, the receiving a report from each organization, et cetera. So if you were reading that.
Okay, then that would be good direction to also get. Is that something that the council would want to see and approve before the funds get allocated? Then that's good too.
So the answer would be, I mean, that's my understanding. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding. Yes, that's our understanding. It's the same thing. I mean, last year when we were discussing the Merchants Association money, it came to a vote at the council. I think that we would expect, and same thing happens for the bids. I would expect the same thing to happen for the Merchants Associations. If we were to vote as a straw poll right now, a majority of council voted to include it in the budget. Given the need for council oversight on this, I would expect it to come back to council for an affirmative vote.
Okay, and before funds were released?
Yes.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
We have time to do that.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
In that case.
okay, so I'm gonna I'll take that straw poll again, specific to the budgeting for $40,000 to Balboa Village Merchants Association. Do I see a show of hands?
That's Council Members Brenner, Dixon, and Mayor Pro Tem Avery are in support of that.
Okay.
For the discussion.
And Council Members Muldoon
All right,
and
it's gonna be 6-1. It's gonna be 6-1 without me. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay, and then the $20,000 to the Balboa Island Merchant Association, Inc., formerly known as Balboa Island Marketing, Inc. Do we have a show of hands for budgeting $20,000 in the next fiscal year for that?
Support is our Council Members Herdman and Dixon.
Okay, and then for $20,000 to the Balboa Island Merchants Association. That's the newer one.
Is that right? Oh, it's the other way around.
Okay, hang on. We're gonna retake the straw poll
Is the new one?
because that's okay.
Okay,
No,
we're
hang on a second. No, hang
Old
hang
one
on.
and the new one.
I'm gonna call. Okay, I'll call it the old one and the new one. What's that? Yeah. So
Inc. is the old one.
A quick point of order.
yes.
Can you say the proprietors are of each by name?
No.
Harp, can you?
Can anyone?
Or who are the individuals behind each?
Tara.
The board president for Balboa Island Merchant Association Incorporated is John Noyes, and the president of the newer association is Matthew Poor.
Okay, so the Inc. is the older association. Okay, all right. So we're gonna call them Inc. And no, we're just gonna call them older and newer. My goodness. All right. Absolutely.
One thing that I sort of would like to have more discussion about is how much money is carried over in each of these organizations. And I think if I vote to support it, when it comes back, can we get information about how much money they have accumulated from the city funds that we have been giving them before we make the final decision?
Yes, and that's my understanding is that would certainly be part of their plan and budget outline is to show us what they've done, because that's a fair point. I will say I am sort of interested actually to see the bids as well. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they've got a lot of cash reserve. I'm going to see. I'd like to see it for myself.
Well, I think you need to know the reason for the cash reserves also.
We
why,
do, and
why the money hasn't all been spent.
Sure, and that's what it'll come back. No,
Right.
I agree, but the same thing is true for these merch associations. Okay, so we're going to come back and we're going to take a straw poll on the $20,000 to the old association. So show of hands for the old association, $20,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's 5-2 without Mr. Muldoon and
Okay,
me.
thank you.
Okay, and then $20,000 to the new association.
5-2 with 6-1 with the mayor voting no.
Okay, all right. You feel you have a sufficient direction?
Yes, and I just want to be clear for the bids and the merchant association, the direction is to provide money in the budget, but it's pending it coming back with the full set of requirements of the budget and the balance sheet and all of that before funds are spent.
Yes. Okay. All right.
And one last question, Will.
Absolutely.
Just for clarification. And the money actually would not be allocated until you're using the word caveat. I'll use the word requirements associated with the acceptance of these funds is received, correct, Grace? In other words, we're saying you can have this money if you do this. So we would have to have the do this in hand before the money would be allocated, I would hope.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I mean, I will just say the only exception to that is when they come back to us, in theory, we could go against that direction and vote to give it to them if they didn't have this. I don't know why we would, but it'd be up to us anyway, so fair enough. Okay, we'll go to our last item. Ms. Leung will go to the novel COVID-19 update, please.
Yes, thank you very much. So for this item, actually, I'd like to begin with talking about having both of our chiefs come up to talk about our public safety response over this past holiday weekend, talk a little bit about the enforcement, and also Chief Boyles as heading our emergency operations team to talk a little bit about the cases in our county as well. And he is also prepared to talk about the junior guard program a little bit too, and some of the decision making that went into at least our current recommendation on that program.
Great. So just a matter of procedure, just given the amount of information each person will need to provide to us, I'd like to just ask that you hold questions until the end, and I'll make sure I provide the opportunity to ask questions of each presenter. Chief.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jeff Boyles, Fire Chief. I'm going to give a quick stat update on the COVID response. As of this afternoon, the County of Orange has 5,578 positive cases and 131 total confirmed deaths. Newport Beach has 139 positive cases. During the stay-at-home orders, the Newport Beach Fire Department's experienced an overall decrease in call load of 16% for the month of March, 27% for the month of April, and 36% for the month of May, and those are compared from 2020 to 2019. You can see as the stay-at-home orders prolonged, our call load tended to drop off. But we utilized the past couple of months to make changes to our dispatching procedures, our policies, some of our operating procedures, and some of our equipment procurement. It's allowed our local healthcare systems to create surge capacities, make other needed changes in order to keep employees and patients as safe as possible. And some of the things that we've correlated with our skilled nursing facilities and Hoag Hospital specifically is how we enter into the hospital. There's certain treatments that we stop doing before we get in. Certain high-risk procedures when we're inside of a house or a facility, we'll bring them outdoors to perform them. Newport Beach Fire Department's responded to 259 what we call enhanced precaution dispatches, and that began on March 1st, 2020, and those are a system where the dispatch takes information from the caller and gives our responding paramedics and firefighters a heads up with regards to, used to be foreign travel, but fever and flu-like symptoms and things of that nature. We know that we've transported 12 known COVID-19 positive patients in the back of our local ambulances to hospitals. That comes as a result after they are positive from the hospital, and the hospital will make contact with our EMS division chief. Once we know that the patient is confirmed positive, we put every responding first responder that touched the patient or was in close contact with them under a medical observation for 14 days, and that's a series of health questionnaires, temperature checks, and overall health monitoring for the entire 14 days. At this point, we've had 47 of our employees go through that 14-day health monitoring, and our last known transport was on May 19th. So we have 20 that are currently under the 14-day program that will go through June 2nd. To date, we have not had any of our fire or lifeguard personnel test positive, which I'm very proud to say. I will say I rode along with our paramedics on Friday for about 2.5 hours, and they ran back-to-back calls, and I got to see the gamut from a fall victim on Balboa Boulevard to a skilled nursing facility to a traffic accident. And I was really impressed with their care, their calm, their compassion, their consideration for the patient's safety, but then their own safety. And it reminded me back when I was on the paramedic van of how you approach a situation in a measured but professional and efficient way. So it made me really proud of what our folks are doing out there in the field and how they're taking people or care of people. Shifting gears a little bit to the beaches, our beaches did experience a surge volume over the weekend, both in the harbor. We saw a lot of activity, a lot of boats, and over on the beach side as well. Our lifeguards performed multiple rescues both in the water, but they were trying to maintain safety and civility and social distancing over on the sand too. So they're pulling double duty that isn't always normal. And with that, I'd like to address our decision regarding the junior lifeguard decision. I know Councilmember Muldoon brought it up a little bit earlier, and obviously it's been quite a topic that all of us have been receiving a lot of emails on. Before I hand it over to Chief Lifeguard Mike Halfide, I want to let everyone know that no one wants to host junior lifeguards more than our lifeguards themselves. Chief Halfide, Captain Mike Ure here is in charge of the program themselves. Most of you know that my son plays quarterback over at Edison High School. He's about to be a senior, and if anybody understands angst and frustration of wanting CIF and wanting youth programs to start, trust me, it's me. It's been grueling. So I understand every one of these emails, I read them, and I get it. I totally get it. We felt that we were bold in our decision. We were the first in Orange County, and at the time, the only ones in the state to even offer anything. So even 150 seemed like a bit of a stretch given the restrictions and conditions that we were under at the time. But at the end of the day, the health and the welfare of my employees, these kids, and the community rests on me. And as a father of 2 teenagers myself, that's not something I take lightly. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Halfide, and he'll go through some of our decision making, and I'm open to suggestions.
Good evening. Mayor O'Neill and council members, we appreciate how important the junior lifeguard program is to the community, to our children, and it's one of the things that makes Newport Beach, Newport Beach. Can I bring up the presentation? So my name is Mike Halfide. I'm the chief lifeguard. With me tonight, I have Mike Ure, who is our lifeguard training captain, who's in charge of our training and our junior lifeguard program, and has 2 of his own children in the program. We'll wait for a moment, will we? Well, while we're waiting, I'll just get going with my presentation. I appreciate you taking time at the end of a long council session to talk about the Junior Guard program. So our program, we celebrated our 35th year last year. We have 1,345 participants. They range from ages of 9 to 15 years old. Our program was started in 1984 by Renee Boyer, and I've talked to her a little bit over the last couple weeks and gone through this. And this decision was not something that was made lightly, was not made without intense deliberation and really understanding how important this program is. All 3 of my children went through it. Captain Ure has 2 in it, and we really know what a value it is to the community. Some of the challenges that we have with our program is physical distancing. So in addition to our 1,345 participants in 2 sessions, we have 55 staff members that we operate out of a triple wide trailer on the beach. I appreciate Public Works, all the things they've done, and we have a building hopefully en route in the next couple of years that will help with some of these, but there's no running water in our trailer. We have 1 hose outside, and so that creates a significant challenge to provide sanitation for our participants, for our staff as well. So the way we're constructed now is that we have up to 22 junior lifeguards in each group with 1 instructor. And so they meet together, they do everything together, and it makes a challenge with the new guidelines. We're looking to go to a 10-to-1 ratio for our oldest junior lifeguards, and that would, following the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Education, their guidelines, thank you, their guidelines in terms of reducing the number of students together at any one time. So you get a couple pictures here with our Junior Guard program. Those are our A's in the upper left. Our picture day, you get to see all 1,350. You can see some of the events that even when they're out in the water or other things, they're in close proximity, and we're just unable to provide physical distancing for the junior lifeguards in the full program. And then the bottom left picture is the Monster Mile, where the 1,350 junior guards run a mile and swim a mile. So these pictures I included just to help you understand the scope of the program. So the challenges we face, the physical distancing, as I said, for our 1,350 junior lifeguards and for our staff as well. We have 50 staff members, 55 actually with our safety aides. We have young junior guards. We have 9-year-old junior lifeguards. As you can see from the young lady in the upper right, these young people present a challenge in terms of their developmental stages, in terms of being able to follow directions, to act independently, to show good judgment. That's one of the reasons that we went with our oldest junior lifeguard group, because we found that 14 and 15-year-olds are able to self-regulate. They're able to follow directions and understand safety protocols and follow that, not only while they're here at the program and receiving direction, but when they're not receiving direction and making good independent decisions, as well as they transit to and from the program. Of the 1,350, we estimate by the bikes and the people coming on the ferry that about 1,000 of them get to junior guards on their own. And so there's a significant traffic through Balboa Island onto the ferry and then along the peninsula as well. We have special events. We have our opening day that the mayor was at last year, where we have probably 500 parents in addition to the junior guards. We have our hot dog dinner, where we have about 3,000 people down for an old school picnic at the Balboa Pier Park, and the Monster Mile, which we have the picture of, as well as our graduation, where Chief Boyles got to participate last year, and we have a picture, and it's just a sea of people that we estimate there's 3,500 to 4,000 people there. None of those events would be possible in any configuration of the program based on the guidelines until we're into phase 4 of that. And then lastly, the cleaning and disinfecting. As I said, we're limited in our sanitation abilities. We'll talk about some of the steps that we are taking, but not only for our staff, for our junior lifeguard participants, and then for the equipment. We have 2 containers full of our paddle boards, rescue tubes, other equipment, boogie boards that the students use. And we would have concerns that typically we share it, one group has it, and then the next group comes and gets it, and that may be used 5 or 6 times per day. In this new environment, that just wouldn't be prudent to be able to do. We would need to sanitize it. And so one of our protocols is that anything equipment that we use, we're going to just use it one time. We've extended the lunch break to include decontamination time. And during that time, we would clean it, disinfect it before we would use it again. And just having that we're operating out of a building on the beach with only a hose, we bring in a couple porta potties to use as well. But we really have challenges with our sanitation as well. This is just for those of you who are visual can see, this is configuration of our program as it existed in 2019. We have the A group, which is our 14 and 15-year-olds, the B group, the 12 and 13, the 10 and 11-year-olds, and the C, which you can see is our largest program, and then the Ds. I know that there's a chance for questions, but one of the questions that we've gotten is, well, why can't you just include some of the other groups? And we looked at that, but if we were to include just the B group, the oldest 2 groups, that would put us at 600 participants. And we just don't think that we could provide the staff and safety for that. If we were to provide the 10-to-1 ratio for the program as configured on the screen, that would require 88 instructors. And the challenge with that is that we have about 145 lifeguards who've committed to work full schedules, that if we took 85 for that, we wouldn't be able to staff our beaches in an appropriate manner. And all these decisions that we've made are based on safety. Renee Boyer, who many of you know, I worked for her for a couple of years, and it was her slogan was safety first, safety last. And every decision that we've made in this are very difficult, but they're made with that mantra in mind. What we plan to do is to have a modified A-only program. So only our 14 and 15-year-olds, we would be divided into groups of 10. If you can imagine just what we had previously, that we have that much fewer, it allows us to provide physical distancing for their groups, as well as being out here in your individual group. They're exposed to, even in the event there was a illness or potential flu-like symptoms, the ratio of the number of people who'd be infected would be much lower. I talk about our staff as well. Our staff are 18 to 25-year-old instructors or ocean lifeguards. The field from the flag on the left, that represents what our staff looks like. We operate out of a 1,000-foot trailer on the beach. They're all in one room, and every summer that we have significant illnesses, flu, pink eye went through there last year, just because they're in such close quarters, there's almost no way to make sure that we provide a highly sanitary environment. Once we get our new building, I think that many of those problems will be resolved. On the right is what our program instructor staff would look like with our A-only program. We would have 8 instructors, we would have 2 safety aides, and then the other people would be our 2 captain, our lifeguard officer, and our admin. We have the 3 R's, and that's the most thing that we teach the kids. It's to be respectful, to represent the city, represent the department, represent the program, and to be responsible. And we think that our decisions today really stand up to the 3 R's. And so at this point, I would be open to taking questions, and I'd call up Captain Muir as well. He's our subject matter expert. While he's coming up, I do have one thing that I would expect to, we have questions, Councilmember Muldoon asked about San Diego. So we've been in contact with all the lifeguard agencies in California on a regular basis on this. All of us are struggling with this dilemma of how to provide such an important program of teaching our youth how to be water safe and all the other things that we learn in junior guards. That in Orange County, we have a twice weekly call with the Orange County lifeguard chiefs. And as of this morning, we're the only agency in Orange County that is committed to do the program. We've been in consultation with our program, the program in San Diego, both at the chief level and at the program director level. We had a call with the director of the program today. And let me give you just a brief amount of background, which hopefully will help understand the differences between our programs. While they do have 1,200 junior lifeguards, they have 2 sessions, so they have 2 4-week sessions, and they have 2 different locations. They're one on the Santa Clara Recreation Center on Mission Bay, and then at their lifeguard headquarters at the south end of Mission Beach. And so in each session, they have a maximum of 300 junior lifeguards. They have about 280 in the afternoon. So the most junior guards that would be any one location at any time is 220 because they'll separate them out. And so it just doesn't really match up exactly that we wouldn't be able to replicate that. One of the questions we've gotten quite a bit of feedback from our community, as you can imagine, is that why wouldn't you do 2 sessions? And when I worked for Mrs. Boyer, the first year I worked down in junior guards, we did 2 4-week sessions, and it was considered a failure by the junior guards, by their families, and by our staff. Because the program is a developmental program. It builds week to week. It's not only building skills, but it's building confidence. And there's just not a good way that we found, at least, to accelerate that process. That it takes time for the children to become more confident, to have confidence in their instructor and see that confidence reflected back in them, and to develop the skills. And we think that if we were to offer 2 4-week sessions, it would leave everyone dissatisfied, and it wouldn't accomplish our goal of making sure that we have very competent, confident, responsible, and ocean-safe youth. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just, I had asked to get a little background on it, and given how passionate our lifeguards are, it was a little more than I thought it was going to be. I do have additional, I just wanted to give additional updates too. I have our police chief coming, and then I just was going to give a couple updates, so I just,
We'll just
I just want to give that to you.
I appreciate that. We'll just take a question from Mr. Muldoon on that one then.
Well, I have questions and statements. So, Mayor Smear, however you like to do it.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So how many participants will be in, and I commend you, by the way, on being bold for the older group, and I'm not trying to push my will on you. I'm trying to buy you more time. Let me tell you why. So if we put someone on an A1 agenda, if we do a straw poll and a majority of us raise our hands, that's 2 weeks from now. We'll learn more. Other cities doing it, as San Diego. You've spoken of San Diego, which is impressive. Has San Diego found a way to make it larger? Have you guys found a way? If 4 of us raise our hands, in another 2 weeks, we would review a staff report. So it's a full month to see if things are changing. From my perspective, things are opening up much more quickly. We're learning from the CDC and from others about essentially the mortality rate and how much better hospitals are able to protect those who come down with COVID. So I'm trying to find a way to get to yes. And personally, I don't think it can be as good of a program, unfortunately, because of all the restrictions that you're acknowledging. And I do think safety should be the most important. What I'm looking out for, and I'm sorry to just be talking to you only, Chief, as you stand up there. What I'm really looking for is a place for our kids to have a structured, safe environment, to get out of the house. They've had school canceled. They're not having the same social interaction. When I was young, we used to run wild. It's a different society now. If some of these individuals, if they're running wild, they're not going to have actually as safe a place to be if they do with us. That being said, I wouldn't anticipate that if you were to find a way that you felt comfortable doing it, I don't want to put anyone in a bad position, that it would be the exact same activities. There might be less water activities. There might be smaller classes. And I have a question actually that I'll ask you in a second about class size. It might be a shorter day. There might be equipment issues where we're asking parents to buy one piece of equipment just for their child marked for them so you don't have to sanitize the equipment. I just sense that there's a strong desire in the community to just try to find a way to make it happen. Speaking of the strong desire, can you tell me how many people have expressed interest in the older category, still doing it in light of everything?
We just put the information out on Thursday, so I don't have that information. In conversations with San Diego, when they put their program out, they had about a 5% cancellation rate.
Okay.
And so we would expect similar.
Yeah, I think that helpful. That information could be helpful because if there's a cancellation rate about that or higher, you can determine, well, does that leave more availability for programs if you need less staff or if you're able to do it. If there are additional resources financially that you need available, I also could see some parents chipping. I mean, I'm getting a lot of zeal in these emails. So I don't know if it's a question of resources and finances and supplies, if it's a question of a creative and new curriculum, if it's a question of discipline, and I know it's not ideal, but this is not an ideal time. It really affects how a kid feels about their summer. So it may not be the same caliber we've had in previous years as far as confidence and duration, but it's really important to some of these families that they get some, whether it's education or structured play. That's all I'm looking for. So my hope is that between the time and a little bit more research and some adjustments, we can find a way. So that's why I put it on the A1. I trust your judgment. I think that with the information given at the time, you made a right decision. But I do think that what I like to do is give you more time and more cover. That's what I think these 4 weeks are going to do, and we're going to learn more about what's happening in other jurisdictions and from the CDC and from the state. So that basically were my intentions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Brenner.
You brought up something that made me question. So the lifeguards that we're using for junior guards are taken off of beach duty. Is that right? So that means the more people we use for junior guards, the less lifeguards there are manning our lifeguard stations or manning the beach. Or how does that work?
You are correct. So we have about 145 lifeguards who've committed to work full season during the summer. And of those, we need about 125 to staff the ocean beaches. And so we have the others that are from our junior lifeguard program. If we were to staff a full program with 88 instructors, it would severely impact our ability to provide lifeguards on our beaches.
Okay, I'm kind of torn because I have 2 junior guards that are going to miss out this year and a daughter who's vehement about me doing something about it. But at the same time, our beaches are so much more crowded than they have been. I was down on the peninsula this weekend, and I've never seen so many people. And I'm concerned about that balance as far as whether we can adequately maintain safety on our beaches and also pull these lifeguards away to do the junior lifeguard program. So
there's some significant logistical hurdles that we would have to overcome. And at this point, if we could have thought how to do it, we would have already done it.
All right, Ms. Dixon.
Just to follow up on your statement, you've thought of all different kinds of permutations, and people have written, I mean, different Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, or Tuesdays and Thursdays. You've looked at fewer days and fewer staff, and I'm sure you've looked at all these different ways to make the class size as small as you need to, but maybe you cannot have the ideal in terms of I mean, certainly your goal is confidence building and the relationships, but to preserve some semblance of the program, to maintain safety, maintain all the operational mandates that you need to do, it may have to be abridged in some way. So it may not be the ideal existing program that you've done for 33 or 36 years, but it's an abridged version. Maybe not for the littlest children, as you say, that maybe requires a little bit too much hand-holding, but for the older kids, just a reduced number of junior guards, reduced days of week, reduced hours, just some semblance, just as Mr. Muldoon and Ms. Brenner said, just to allow the kids to have something to get out of, just to do something different because they've been home since March. I'm not suggesting you haven't thought about these things, but it just sitting up here, I certainly would be supportive of some type of an abridged program, even though it's a shadow of its former self, but it would be something. That's just where I am in it. I also want to just ask a follow-up question to the chief, fire chief. Could you just talk about what Ms. Brenner mentioned, the crowds of the beach? I wanted to ask you. I haven't heard the weekend numbers in a while. If you could just report on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday numbers, please.
Both Friday and Saturday, we had estimated 60,000.
Each day?
Each day.
60?
60, yes. Monday was about 50. It dropped off a little bit. Yesterday, there were more boats in the harbor, but not as many people on the beach. But it was
I think I saw just about every one of them.
They were our 3 most crowded days of the year
so
so
we've
far.
gone kind of back to where we were almost. Okay, thank you very much.
Well, and on that note, in talking to the Huntington Beach Fire Chief with regards to lifeguards, they're preparing for a busier summer at the beach this summer because of the lack of other things to really do around the Southland. People come to go to Disneyland or Angels game that's not available.
That's
so
right, it's free.
They're coming to the beach.
And it's free, other than parking. All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Avery, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I just want to commend you on the plan. I think there's disappointment after disappointment in this time we're in. We've all lost out on experiences and being with friends and going places and the rest of it. And I've read the letters too, and they're really compelling to expand the program and look at it different ways. But at the same time, I think obviously you're looking at it really from a safety standpoint, and it's just not ocean safety. It's just safety from kids getting involved with an outbreak and all the rest of it, and being able to just accomplish your mission, which is far beyond the junior guard program. So I would just like to commend you on that, the restraint, and still being able to offer the program to the oldest kids for their last year. So it's hard for me to, impossible for me to understand the challenges you face in doing something like this. But I just want to thank you very much for.
Thank you very much.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And I apologize for taking so much time, but obviously this is something we feel very strongly on.
We've received a lot of discussion on this. It's worth the conversation. All right, Chief Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor Neal. John Lewis, Chief of Police. And Ms. Seeling asked me to just talk a little bit about the Memorial Day weekend, what our deployment plan was like, and sort of the feel that we had out there over the course of the weekend. As Chief Wells mentioned, it was we saw significant crowds at the beaches, 60,000 plus a day. And Monday was also a busy day as well, which is all what we had expected. The overall consensus was that crowds, as I mentioned, were large. Our peak times were about 2 o'clock on each one of these days. And we saw people driving down here from great distances, frankly, all the way from the high desert, spending the day down in the beach. So it wasn't just, typically we see our local, more inland areas down at the beach, but we also saw some pretty substantial distances. The crowds were large in volume, but were well behaved for the most part, and mostly families is what we saw down there. We deployed a full complement of resources on this Memorial Day weekend, and in an effort to address what we knew that were going to be anticipated larger crowds and traffic. And obviously that is an enhanced patrol deployment plan, but we also complemented that with our motor police officers, both day and night shifts, added parking control officers, added animal control officers, and then we also emphasized our beach detail in West Newport. So we had officers that were specifically dedicated daytime and nighttime shifts to police nothing other than the stretch of the beach. And then this is all in addition to our peninsula enforcement team, which we're all familiar with. Those are our bicycle officers that are also specifically assigned to the beach. What we saw were significant calls for service volume. We also saw a number of proactive contacts, arrests, and citations. So I ran through the numbers here this morning, and there's still a couple coming in because it was, counting through yesterday. But we looked at in terms of our personal service citations, our folks wrote 153 personal service citations. So that's everything from the alcohol violations, the vehicle code violations, speeding, all those types of things are included in that personal service citation category of 153. Parking control wrote 191 citations, nearly 200 parking citations. We also had 46 physical arrests that were made over the course of the weekend. So significant volume from our police officers out there. It was a heavy lift in terms of activity, but I think the important thing to remember too is that when you look at all this, when you look at 50 plus arrests, hundreds of citations, and hundreds of calls for service, we didn't have any significant incidents in West Newport. I mean, we had incidents. There were certain priority incidents, but in terms of large scale incidents that required additional response or something that may have resulted in the need for investigative resources, things like that were going to carry us through the weekend, we didn't have a need for that, which I thought was really encouraging considering the volume of folks that we saw down there. One thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was the restaurants, because I got a lot of questions about that and what that was going to look like. And so what we did is we brought out our investigative team that handles ABC compliance, and you're familiar with a number of those investigators, and they're typically the ones that we see during planning session that have specific expertise as it relates to our licensed establishments. And what we saw was that our restaurants were doing a commendable job in implementing a plan for dining and eating. We had some really good cooperation, some good dialogue with our businesses, and really good cooperation. So we saw alcohol service was required with food service, and we didn't observe any violations out there, which I thought was very encouraging. We saw a couple locations too, in particular in town, that had lines, and we were able to work through that with them at all. Some of the questions I got were to-go alcohol, and that's part of the new emergency order. And so that's something we're continuing to grow into. And the ABC regulatory relief talks about that, to-go alcohol must be in certain specified containers, and locations have really been doing their best to explain this to customers and about alcohol being bought from one of these locations and then consumed in public areas and it being illegal. But we did observe some folks there that were not complying with that. And really what we've seen is that to-go alcohol, it's creating some confusion for just some well-meaning and frankly law-abiding beachgoers. So that's a work in progress, and that's something that we're also, we have not seen our businesses down there necessarily incentivizing that type of activity. I think it's new, and it's something we're going to continue to work through. But again, significant volumes of people in traffic, and the associated complaints that go along with that. I mean, there were, we're close to 700 calls for service over the weekend, but no significant incidents. I thought it was a great team effort all around with our lifeguard team in particular. Chief Boyles, Chief Alpha, my compliments to your staff. It was a big weekend for a lot of reasons. And we all know what we're seeing at the beach right now is just the absence of activities. And we have folks that, kids, they don't have baseball to play. There's no softball, there's no dance recitals, and people have this time, and the weather was gorgeous. And they're coming down the beach, and they're coming down in significant volumes, and it's not unique to us. We're seeing that from our neighboring communities as well. So again, busy weekend, deployed appropriately, and we had successful results.
All right, a couple of questions, Ms. Dixon.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank both chiefs for the deployment that they've been ramping up for these last 3 or 4 weekends, anticipating that Memorial Weekend, if the sun was shining, it was going to be a busy weekend, and indeed it was. I want to thank you both for listening to the residents. You get the same letters I get and the phone calls that come in, so I know you hear what the residents were concerned about. The residents really have moved on from education and encouragement. I think that's just very difficult to implement. And they're not critical. They're just realizing the reality of how it's a never-ending challenge. But so focusing, and this is where I'm focused too, on the enforcement of our municipal code. And that relates to the alcohol on the beach. That relates to beach closing at 10 o'clock. That relates to speeding on our streets. And the enforcement of our codes is what you folks do best. And so I heard emails Saturday morning, about Friday night, a ton of them, some of which I circulate to the full council, some of which I circulate to both you and Ms. Leong, but not all of them. Saturday morning, I got a ton of emails about behavior issues on the sand, related to mainly people not getting off at 10 o'clock. And despite your effort, your team's excellent efforts, you've got the teams that go out on the SUVs that go out on the sand and clear everybody out, and then people wait, and then they come back out again. So I know it's a challenge. And then Sunday morning, more emails about the alcohol, about the boardwalk, all the vehicles that were motorized vehicles on the boardwalk, and the people on the beach with fireworks at 1 o'clock in the morning, and bonfires, not in the fire pits, but literally bonfires in the sand. So I know you know all of this, and your people were out there dealing with it. So, as you know, I guess Sunday night was a bad night for the same kind of activity. So Sunday morning, I contacted Grace and you, Monday morning, and said, I'm going to go out there Monday night, last night, and see for myself. Now, I just happened to choose when I think everybody's just purely exhausted in terms of the visitors that come to Newport Beach. So I get out there, I met your officer, the sergeant, at Newport Pier at 10 o'clock. I was fully prepared to stay out there until 2 in the morning to go up and down the peninsula, and there was nobody there. It was a quiet night. I mean, I saw your people empty the beaches and up and down, very effective. I see all those people coming on to Newport Pier, coming on to McFadden Square, and kind of just congregating there. And that's public space, and we can't do anything about that. But the beaches seem to be clear. I was there till about midnight, and beaches were clear. The sidewalks were clear. The residents lining the boardwalk on Oceanfront, the lights were off. People were sleeping. So yesterday, was a very successful day. So I think the ramping up and the coverage, I heard from residents, the most critical residents who have been critical, complimented both the lifeguards and the police, that it seemed like it all came together well this weekend. So I commend you. I know you've been giving it the just amazing efforts for your whole team, and I'm very grateful as a representative for this district. I know it's not perfect. We're dealing with, and Ms. Brenner and I have talked about this, we're dealing with, in our respective beaches, we're dealing with a different type of beach visitor today. As you say, they're coming from far distances. They're frustrated. This is the only free activity people can do if they're unemployed. They don't have the money. And so we're dealing with people who really are practicing civil disobedience. They don't want to follow the law and the rules and the codes, and so they resist. They resisted. I've had people say that to me. I don't know them. I mean, when I talk to people on the beach. So given what we're dealing with in these extraordinary times, I'm very grateful. I know you sometimes get frustrated with me forwarding you these emails, but I figured you ought to see what I see. But I'm speaking mainly for our residents to know that, and I know they know this, that you really are working hard to protect us and to keep the community safe. And your men and women are working very hard to do it, and I'm grateful and I appreciate it, and I just hope we can get through the rest of the summer in peace. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Chief, you had a couple more. Ms. Brenner.
I just want to say thank you to all of you, because you have been dealing with extraordinary circumstances, and I know we've been badgering you guys about more citations, more enforcement. It's like what we're getting, we're conveying that frustration to you guys, and I know it seems like we're being critical, but we're not. We just want everybody to see that we are enforcing our laws. And so I did I periodically do a drive-through from one end of town to the other, and I did it Sunday afternoon. And as I was on the peninsula, an emergency vehicle was trying to get down, and there was wall-to-wall traffic, but everybody did pull over and let them get through. I got down, did the drive around on Peninsula Point. There were 4 emergency vehicles at, I think, West Jetty Park that were doing a rescue of some sort, and they had managed to get there and were doing their jobs. And then I came back, got in line for the ferry, and as I've been complaining all this time about not enough enforcement, a police officer pulled a car over right in front of me and gave them a ticket, but he did it very nicely. He was not rude or belligerent or, asserting, a kind of police presence that we don't normally have in Newport Beach. He was very polite about it. And as I was sitting there, I watched a bicyclist get hit by a car in the intersection. And the bicyclist was, as I saw all over, a lot of these people seem to have an air of invincibility about them. I've seen this all over town where it's like then I came back to Colonel DeMar, there was a lady walking down the yellow stripe in the middle of Ocean Boulevard who just continued right down the middle of the street. And it's like the behaviors that we're seeing are so unusual for what we have in our community. But I'm hoping that the fact that you are giving this number of citations, clearing the beaches, that the word will spread, and that maybe by Monday, people were getting the message that it's not just a free for all in Newport, and that we do enforce our laws. And I hope that this behavior somehow changes, because it's really been the most. Have you noticed? It's just really different behavior.
I think number one, it's interesting the perspective that you hear on enforcement. You never see a cop until they're in your rearview mirror, right? Yeah. And so that's what we're dealing with. But the reality is that we as a police department have a long-standing tradition of a commitment to community policing, to being legitimate, to being firm, to being fair in our approach to enforcement, and that's how we do it. We have a significant success to point to that, everything from our response times to our reduction in Part 1 crime to our arrest. Every metric you can apply to community policing is something that we hold very highly, and it's something that's values us to a police department. And so you're in a situation where you have this unique set of circumstances where we have right now, where we are seeing a large volume of people. However, it's for different reasons than we would normally see. This isn't the back in the 1990s of the big alcohol infused crowd gatherings. That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing families that are going to the beach, and it's creating traffic issues, and it's creating complaints of crowding, and it's something that our residents, with everything else that is going on right now, are frankly not comfortable with, and I completely understand that. So we've, again, we are out there, we are fair, we are firm, we are enforcing our municipal codes, and we will continue to do that in the same manner that we always have. Newport Beach has never been a place that anyone has ever thought that they're going to get a free pass. It's never been there. And I think that all of us, right, that have spent time in this city, and we're proud of that. But again, we are fair, we are firm, and we are highly visible, and we are out there every day going about the business of public safety. This has been a challenge. The attitudes have been different because there's almost this, there's been some inconsistency, I would say, in terms of what we've seen other jurisdictions doing in terms of how they were going to enforce or not enforce certain things. And we've maintained our reasonable, measured approach to going about our business this entire time, which I think speaks to the quality of your public safety team as well. So, but there have been some moments out there where we've seen some behavior, frankly, that was a little bit surprising to us over things that probably didn't warrant that type of reaction. So, as to the beaches, what we've seen is this started off with the bioluminescence, and how this has happened before. It's never been such a big deal unless it's but in the environment that we're seeing right now, it just created a huge amount of interest. And so it takes time to reestablish what the norms are going to be out there, and we've done that over the past couple of weekends, where we've seen initially clearing the beaches. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people that were moving off these beaches. It's been a heavy lift to get that done. It's been getting, with each night, with each weekend, is beginning progressively better. So that is, we're going to continue to do that because I think it's important that we do that. But it's been, we're seeing some improvement there, which is progress that we're encouraged, and we're going to continue to keep the pressure on going into summer, knowing that quality of life things are going to continue to be a concern for our folks, which I totally understand. My hope is that with some of the easing that we're seeing, with some other options that are becoming available, I mean, shopping being open, all these things, is that we're going to see that we're going to see some of that start to ease over the next several weeks, and I believe that reasonably will be the case just based on how we saw this build up. It naturally is going to see with the easing that we'll hopefully see some relief there. But regardless, we're prepared appropriately, and we're staffed up to deal with it.
Thank you. I'll finish with just a couple of comments. One of them is, as we're hearing hundreds of citations and a significant amount that our police department did over the weekend, it's always worth remembering that when we do receive the emails saying that they've never seen a police officer in the history of their lives on the peninsula, that perhaps it's worth just double checking with our police department first. The other thing I would say is that I do want to emphasize what the chief had said. There was an article that came out in the LA Times last week that over 20,000 people are not in jail that otherwise would have been 8 weeks ago, and over 3,500 people have been released from prison that would have been in there but for COVID releases. And that means that there is a much larger quantity of criminal on the streets right now, and there is a lower quality of criminal on the streets right now. And anecdotally, from talking to other officers I know in other agencies, they're seeing a lot more guns on criminals that they're taking in, even on low-level offenses. We're seeing we're just, you're seeing people who are willing to take a little more risk because they know that there's a no bail system in place right now. It's not that complicated. You see these stories where people are committing 2 or 3 felonies a day because they can get in and out really fast from jail. And so my point being, our police department is seeing things that are far more dangerous and far more resource intensive than trying to worry as much about an open container on the beach. And so there is an issue here of resource allocation that I would hope that our residents can appreciate at some point, because it's not a complicated equation to decide which one do we want our police deploying after, the people with guns or the people with alcohol in their red Solo cups. Yes, we absolutely should want all of the things that we've made crimes enforced, but there is that resource allocation, and we have got to take that into consideration when 23,000 plus people who should be in jail or prison are not somewhere in our state. So I do appreciate everything that's going on here, Chief. I do, and I think that we've got to, stay focused on the core mission here. I also will say, I think that with restaurants being open, you're going to see a lot less trash because people are going to take less takeout. I think that people are going to be more likely to go grab a drink at a restaurant now that they're open, and probably more so once we open up patios and whatnot, or a little bit of public spaces, and not so much try to take it out on the beach. So I'm hopeful of that, but I think that's what we're going to see. So anyway, Chief, I appreciate everything you all are doing, so stay safe on that one. All right, Ms. Leung.
I just have a couple slides, if we could. No, I need to grab the remote. Can you grab me that remote real quick? Thank you. And I'll also note for the weekend, the other folks who really put a real heavy lift is our public works and utilities in terms of getting our trash service up. We had a couple staff who did that full time over the weekend of following behind on the trash pickup service to get the additional pickups and on the street sweeping as well there. So I really appreciate that efforts all around. I just want to, no, I can't. Can you forward it for me? I just want to go very briefly to talk on the Stage 2 business reopen that the county got approved to go to the full Stage 2. Just to note that these are the set of businesses that are allowed open. And the last two, the places of worship and hair salons and barbershops, just came out last night and today. So I just want to emphasize how fluid and fast moving these different, just how this reopening is going. I think I joked with another city manager. We thought closures were hard. I think reopenings are like double the effort and the challenges and the complexity to those. So, and to the earlier point with council members, we put plans and motions and actions that we have to do with the information we have. It keeps moving. We'll keep adapting as best we can. We have to find the right times where we sometimes just have to pull the trigger of when we can move forward or not, but we'll keep looking and work to do everything we can through these efforts. The other interesting point of the part of moving so quickly, if we can move to the next slide, is that there's a whole set of requirements that businesses are supposed to do as part of that reopening. This came out so fast Saturday morning. The county's still playing, I think, catch up to getting the education out for the businesses. And there was some guidance that came out about face coverings that came out Saturday, that today at the Board of Supervisors meeting, there were additional modifications, discussions around that and what that means. And that all creates just a lot more just nuance and efforts on our parts to, and our businesses to kind of pull through and figure out what is required, what isn't, what needs to be done to be compliant. So I just want to emphasize, we're really looking at the state and the county guidelines that are out there, and really working from there first. But they're moving so quickly and adjusting themselves, so trying to keep up together with them has been challenging through this reopening stages. And then I just want to bring up, if we can move to the next slide, on our own city facilities. We have opened, I think, very successfully in a phased approach with our city hall. We have our permit counter open. We opened the planning counter this week. So we're just being mindful and doing it in a moderated, steady pace, adjusting as we see. But I think it's been very welcomed. We've had good customer visits coming in. So certainly it's something that was really desired, and I'm glad to see people are able to take advantage of that while creating an environment that's safe for both them and for our employees. And the other big piece for us under the services section is street sweeping. And it's really important to be able to have the cars off the road to effectively clean the streets and make sure our water quality is protected, because to the extent we have the dirt and debris, it's going into our water system. So we are looking right now to begin street citations in mid-June, with doing outreach and warnings first for a few weeks. So that's where we're looking right now. We know we've gotten a lot of feedback on this, and it's completely understandable. I mean, we know where that's coming from. We're just trying to balance that right level of providing the services that we need, but understanding, the concerns of people who are still at home, and, just the challenges when you have more visitors and you're moving your car around. So that's understandable. I know our utilities director has really been looking to see if there's particular areas, maybe we can do some modifications to. We know we've gotten some suggestions. Could you shorten the hours of how you do it? So we're looking at all of that right now. And so this is what we have put out right now. We're looking at and open to additional, solutions and modifications as we go down this path on this. So certainly if there's feedback to this, we're certainly happy to take that, and also have Mark Vukovic here to answer questions or talk further about that too.
Ms. Dixon? Yeah, we'll go. There are a couple of questions. Oh, I'm sorry, were you not done?
I just have one more slide. And I'll be on, this is a slide that gives me heartbreak, and I think it does most of our staff, because when I had to put out, and start to make the call on our classes and our special events and areas, that, really just makes it not the summer that we're used to or would like, or and a lot of, traditions and things that mean a lot to this community. So I just hope, and I know you all know, because you've been supportive, this has been hard on us too. But we will continue to evaluate as that's the earlier slide that talked about, changes that come out. If they come out and we're able to do half a summer of classes, we'll look into doing that. So we're continuing to look at things, but we also want to just make sure we do it safely for the community members and our employees and everybody all around with that. So with that, I'm happy to take questions and have staff here to take questions too.
Okay. I have one quick question on that last slide. You were talking about summer classes and camps being canceled, or suspended, I should say. If, by all accounts, most people expect the governor to make a decision this week on summer camps and classes and things like that for kids. If he does so, and we are would we be able to open up registration fairly quickly for a modified version that would be able to meet the new requirements?
We think so. We want to see guidance, and the governor did mention today that there would be guidance coming out about summer camps this week. So we're looking at that, and then also there has yet to been an opening on gatherings yet. So those are the two things, and if we have those things. I have been, our Parks and Rec director has been looking very closely at whether we can do a program for the second half of the summer, yes, to do a modified, maybe a shortened summer class program.
Okay. All right, Ms. Dixon.
One question and then a comment. Playgrounds. I've been asked about playgrounds? What's the, I don't even know where we are in playgrounds, because this weekend I saw kids at Marina Park and another park. So are they open or closed?
Our parks are open for passive use, but not our playground equipment. So, so I'll make sure to follow up with staff about.
I'm sorry. I mean, I wish they were open. I mean, it's just a shame that kids can't play on playground equipment. Two, as a comment, it's just incredible what you and staff are doing to keep us all functioning and being adaptive. Every 24 hours, there's a new set of rules or guidelines or processes that you are incorporating. I know none of you at the senior level, as well as down however far in the organization, have had a day off in probably 64 days or something. I don't know what the going day is. So I just want you to know that I'm appreciative. I'm grateful for what staff is doing. These are extraordinary times, and we issue thoughts and you figure out how to get it done, and are constantly adapting to serve this community in the way that they're accustomed to being served, with the high level of service, and figuring out ways that we can make it work. That's all what you've all been doing, is trying to make it work, and appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner.
Grace, I had a question about, do we know when the first day of school is going? Are they moving the school opening up, or do we know?
They had, I don't know if the mayor would like to go ahead.
Go ahead. I know the answer, but go ahead.
August 24th is the date they had made, even before the COVID came out. And I think right now that's the date currently they're looking at opening. How they open and what it looks like, I'm not sure yet, but that's the... Yeah.
Okay, and then one other comment on street sweeping. I had suggested that if we could narrow the hours down to, an hour or 2 hours, that these were the times that you had to move your car. But the other thing is, if we could have the parking control just proceed the street sweeper and then not go afterwards. Once people see that the street has been swept, then they could go ahead. And I've parked back on a street that there were still wet marks on the street, and parked there and gotten a ticket for that. So if we could make sure that the parking control proceeds the street sweeper, and that people know if they see it go by that they can resume parking in that area, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think we could take a look at that. I think a lot of it is when we get more individualized and customized, it just takes more resources.
And it's confusing,
but I understand.
Confusing to people too.
Yeah,
but
I got it.
That might be helpful.
We'll look into that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the update. We'll take public comment on this now.
Mayor Neal, members of the council, I would, I commend the city for providing its COVID update in public and not seeking exceptions where it could do it in private that some of our neighboring cities seem to have been using. It's very, very nice that the public has been able to hear this discussion in its entirety. Regarding the virus itself, I think Orange County, Hoag Hospital, and our paramedics have been very fortunate not to have been hit like New York or even like Los Angeles. But I think we should not discount completely the possibility that with the reopening, there will be a resurgence and the virus problem will become worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Any calls? No. All right, we'll bring it back. Thank you very much, everyone, thank you. We recognize the hard work. We really do, especially up here. So thank you. Madam Clerk.
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council, either this meeting or the previous meeting, may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Any motions for reconsideration? All right, tonight we're going to be adjourning in the memory of General William Lyon. William Lyon, a renowned home builder and Orange County civic leader, died Friday, May 22nd at the age of 97. Lyon was born in 1923 in Los Angeles. He attended the University of Southern California prior to enlisting in the U.S. Army Air Corps as a reservist in 1943. During World War II, General Lyon was assigned to the Pacific and European theaters where he ferried aircraft. In 1954, he volunteered for a tour of duty in Korea and flew some 75 combat missions. General Lyon remained in the service as a reservist throughout the years before retiring in 1979 as a Major General in the Air Force with duties that included serving as the commander of the U.S. Air Force Reserve Command. His military decorations and awards included the Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters, Legion of Merit, Presidential Unit Citation, Air Force Outstanding Unit Award, Combat Readiness Medal, Armed Forces Reserve Medal with Hourglass device, and the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation. He was the founder of the Lyon Air Museum near the John Wayne Airport. General Lyon joined Newport Beach resident George Argyros in 1981 to buy AirCal Airline. In addition to his military career, General Lyon joined his family in developing an Orange County home building company in the 1950s. In the early 1970s, General Lyon started the William Lyon Company, headquartered in Newport Beach. He developed it into one of the largest home building companies in the nation. General Lyon was also very active locally in philanthropic endeavors, supporting organizations including the Orange County Performing Arts Center, Orangewood Children's Foundation, and the Boy Scouts of America. He is survived by his wife, Willa Dean, 2 daughters, Susan Isola and Christine Rhodes, stepdaughter, Marcia Stone, son, Bill H. Lyon, 7 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. He was predeceased by his son, Byron Russell. Services will be private with a celebration of life to follow at a later date. In lieu of flowers, the family is requesting donations be made to Orangewood Foundation. We stand adjourned.